This German prison of war woman wanted to have a baby with a black American soldier in the middle of World War II. The train wheels screeched to a halt, and my body swayed forward with the sudden stop. Through the grimy window, I could see Camp McCoy sprawled before us, bathed in the orange glow of sunset. My hands trembled as I clutched my small bag of belongings, all that remained of my life before capture. "Rouse! Everyone out!" An American soldier called in broken German. I shuffled forward with the other prisoners, my legs stiff from the long journey. The evening air was cool against my face as I stepped onto the platform. Other German prison of wars, mostly men, with a few nurses like myself, formed neat lines as instructed. I kept my chin up, determined to maintain whatever dignity I had left. The American soldiers watched us with blank expressions. I searched their faces for signs of the cruelty I'd been warned about, but found none. They simply looked tired, like men doing their job. "Line up here," a voice called out in English. "Women to the right, men to the left." I understood enough English to follow the instructions. As I moved to join the other female prisoners, I noticed him, a black soldier standing near the processing table. My breath caught in my throat. In all my years in Germany, I'd never seen a Negro up close. He wore the same uniform as the white soldiers, stood with the same authority. Private Johnson, I would later learn was his name, caught my stare and gave me a small, professional nod. I quickly looked away, confused by his calm demeanor. Where was the savagery we'd been taught to expect? His eyes held only patience and perhaps a hint of understanding. We were led through processing one by one. I handed over my papers with trembling fingers, expecting rough treatment. Instead, the soldiers were methodical and polite. They asked questions in simple English, speaking slowly when we didn't understand. "You're a nurse, Private?" Johnson asked when he saw my papers. His voice was soft, gentle even. "Ja," I replied stiffly, avoiding his eyes. "Yes." He made a note on his clipboard. "You'll be assigned to the camp hospital." I nodded, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it never did. The camp itself was nothing like I'd imagined. Clean barracks stood in neat rows, the smell of cooking food wafted from a mess hall. Some prisoners who'd arrived earlier walked about freely within the fenced perimeter, talking in small groups. At the hospital building, a white medical officer gave me a brief tour. The facilities were basic, but well maintained. "You'll start tomorrow," he said. "Get some rest tonight." Later, in my assigned bunk, I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the camp. A train whistle echoed in the distance. Male voices drifted through the thin walls, American soldiers laughing about something. Wind rustled through the trees outside our barracks. My mind wouldn't quiet. Everything I thought I knew seemed to be crumbling. The Americans weren't beating or starving us. The Negro soldier had shown more dignity than many German officers I'd known. I touched my wedding ring, thinking of Hans, killed in a bombing raid over Berlin. What would he make of all this? Sleep refused to come. I stared at the wooden slats of the bunk above me, trying to make sense of this new reality. The night sounds of Camp McCoy continued their strange symphony. Boots on gravel, distant voices, wind in the trees, while my thoughts chased themselves in circles until dawn. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now, back to the story. The morning sun streams through the barracks window, but I've barely slept. My muscles ache from the long journey and the uncomfortable cot. Still, I force myself up, straightening my uniform as best I can. It's time to report to the camp hospital. The walk across the compound is surreal. American. Soldiers pass by, some nodding politely. I keep my eyes down, unsure how to respond. This isn't what I expected from captivity. Inside the hospital, I'm greeted by a middle-aged man in a white coat. "Dr. Allen," he introduces himself with a casual smile. "You must be Nurse Weber." His demeanor is so matter-of-fact, as if having a German prison of war assist in his hospital is the most natural thing in the world. "Yes, sir," I respond stiffly, my English careful and measured. "No need for sir here," he says, leading me through the ward. "Just Dr. Allen will do. Let me show you around. The hospital is well organized, clean, and surprisingly well stocked, Doctor." Allen explains my duties. Changing bandages, preparing supplies, assisting the other nurses. Everything is so normal, professional. Where's the hatred I was warned about? The mistreatment? The contempt? I work alongside American nurses who speak to me as if I'm just another colleague. They show me where supplies are kept, explain their procedures, even ask my opinion on certain treatments. It's unsettling how ordinary it all feels. Mid-morning, I'm organizing bandages when Private Johnson enters the ward. My hands freeze momentarily as he approaches. He's carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he says, offering me one. "First day can be tough. I stare at the steaming cup, baffled by this simple gesture. Back home, they told us. But no, I can't think about that now. My fingers tremble slightly as I accept it. Danke, I mumble, then quickly correct myself. Thank you. He gives me a gentle smile and moves on to check on some patients. I watch as he speaks with both American and German soldiers, his manner equally kind with each. The Germans, despite their initial wariness, respond to his quiet dignity. Throughout the day, I notice more things that challenge everything I was taught. Black and white American soldiers work together, joke together, eat together. They treat me, their enemy, with basic human decency. Each small interaction chips away at the foundations of what I believe to be true. By evening, my mind is swimming. Back in my barracks, I sit on my cot, turning the day's events over in my head. Private Johnson's face keeps appearing in my thoughts. The gentle way he offered me coffee, his patient interactions with the wounded. Such a simple thing, that cup of coffee, yet it represents everything that doesn't make sense about this place. I pull my thin blanket around my shoulders, trying to sort through my confusion. The hatred I was raised with feels hollow in the face of today's experiences. How can I reconcile what I was taught with what I'm seeing? What else might I have been wrong about? The sound of evening roll call drifts through the window. Another day in captivity begins to wind down, but my mind won't rest. Everything I thought I knew about my captors, about America, about race, it's all being questioned, and I'm not sure how to feel about any of it. The line for dinner stretches across the mess hall like a tired snake. I shuffle forward with the other prisoners, clutching my metal tray. The smell of beans and bread fills the air. Simple food, but better than what we'd had during the final months of fighting. I take my portion with a quiet Danke and find a seat at a table with other German nurses. We eat in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The clink of spoons against metal trays creates a steady rhythm, punctuated by muted conversations in English and German. 2 American soldiers sit at the table next to ours. They're young, probably no older than 25. Their voices carry over to where I sit. First thing I'm going to do when I get home is hug my mama, one says, spooning food into his mouth. Then I'm going to sit on our front porch and watch the sunset. Me? His friend responds, I'm opening that garage I always talked about. No more war, just the smell of engine oil and the sound of motors. Running smooth. Their words catch me off guard. These men, our captors, speak of peace with such simple longing. There's no talk of victory or revenge, just quiet dreams of home and normal life. Something inside me shifts, like a door creaking open after years of being sealed shut. I'm still pondering their conversation when a shadow falls across my tray. Looking up, I find Private Johnson standing there, his presence both commanding and gentle. How are you settling in, Nurse Weber? He asks, his voice carrying genuine concern. Fine, I reply stiffly, my eyes fixed on my half-empty plate. The camp is adequate. Instead of walking away, he pulls out the chair across from me. That's not what I asked, he says softly. I asked how you were settling in. How you're doing. Maybe it's the exhaustion. Maybe it's the way he looks at me. Not as a Nazi, not as an enemy, but as a person. Whatever the reason, words I never meant to speak tumble out. I don't know how to survive this. I whisper, my voice barely audible. Not just this place, but everything. What we've seen, what we've done, what we've lost. I pause, struggling to find the right words. How does one's soul survive such things? Private Johnson doesn't rush to answer. He sits quietly, letting my words hang in the air between us. When I finally look up, I'm struck by what I see in his eyes. Not pity, not judgment, but understanding. Deep, profound understanding. One day at a time, he says finally. That's all any of us can do. Walking back to my barracks later, the cool evening air nips at my face. My chest feels tight, as if something is pressing against it from the inside. Memories flood my mind. The propaganda posters that once decorated Munich's streets, the speeches I'd listened to with such fervor, the hatred I'd been taught to carry in my heart. But now, those certainties feel like sand slipping through my fingers. Private Johnson's eyes haunt me, their warmth, their humanity. What kind of life has he known? What battles has he fought? Not just in this war, but in his own country? For the first time, I find myself wanting to know more about this man who treats enemy prisoners with more dignity than many of my own countrymen showed their neighbors. The morning sun streams through the hospital windows as I prepare the bandages and antiseptic. My hands move automatically, folding the white gauze with practiced precision. A young American soldier sits on the examination table, his arm bleeding from a deep cut he got while working in the camp's kitchen. This might sting a little. I warn him, my accent still thick despite weeks of speaking English. I expect him to flinch or pull away. After all, I'm German, the enemy. Instead, he gives me a small smile and nods. "Go ahead, ma'am," he says, so politely it makes my chest tight. As I clean his wound, I notice his steady breathing, his calm demeanor. When I finish wrapping his arm, he looks up at me with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Nurse Weber. You've got gentle hands." The words hit me like a physical blow. Why aren't they cruel to us? Why don't they hate us the way we were taught to hate them? My throat feels thick with emotion I can't name. Later that afternoon, I'm assigned to work with Private Johnson in the small infirmary unit. We sort through medical supplies together, our movements careful and coordinated in the tight space. I find myself studying his face when he's not looking the kind eyes, the steady hands that handle delicate vials with such care. "You're from the South?" I ask suddenly, surprising myself. Jimmy looks up, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Alabama," he says. "Cotton fields far as the eye can see." What was it like? The words tumble out before I can stop them. He's quiet for a moment, arranging bandages in neat rows. "Different from here," he finally says. "Back home I couldn't walk into certain stores, couldn't drink from certain water fountains, had to step off the sidewalk when white folks passed by." I stop what I'm doing, truly looking at him now. "But you're an American soldier," I say, confusion clear in my voice. "Even in uniform, ma'am. Some people only see the color of my skin." His voice is gentle, but there's an old pain there. But I dream of something better. A future where my children won't have to face what I faced, where they'll be judged by who they are, not what they look like. His words make me think of all the things I was taught about race, about superiority. How certain I was of those beliefs just months ago. Now, watching Jimmy's careful movements, hearing the quiet dignity in his voice, those certainties feel like sand slipping through my fingers. That evening, I sit alone in the corner of my barracks, Jimmy's words echoing in my mind. The other women chat quietly around me, but I barely hear them. I think about kindness, the kind shown to me by these Americans, the kind Jimmy shows despite everything he's endured. For the first time, I let myself imagine a different world. A world where people aren't divided by the accidents of their birth, where kindness isn't surprising, but expected. My hands shake slightly as I smooth my blanket. Everything I thought I knew seems to be crumbling, and in its place, something new and frightening and hopeful is taking root. I stood at the hospital doorway, my hands still smelling of antiseptic from cleaning supplies. The sound of laughter caught my attention, genuine, warm laughter that seemed out of place in a prisoner of war camp. Curious, I stepped outside, into the cool evening air. A group of soldiers, both American and German prison of wars, had gathered in a loose circle near the hospital. Some sat on wooden crates while others stood, their uniforms a mix of olive, drab, and feldgrau in the fading light. The sight stopped me in my tracks. Here were supposed enemies, sharing stories and cigarettes as if the war didn't exist. I lingered in the shadows, watching. An American soldier was acting out some story with wild gestures, making everyone laugh. Even some of my fellow German prisoners were smiling. Real smiles, not the strained ones we usually wore. It felt surreal. "Nurse Weber!" Jimmy's voice startled me. He stood a few feet away, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "Why don't you join us?" My chest tightened. I shouldn't. The words came automatically, but Jimmy was already shaking his head. "Come on," he said gently. "Everyone's welcome here." Something in his voice made me take that first step forward. The conversations didn't stop as I approached. No suspicious glances or hostile stares. Jimmy guided me to an empty crate near the edge of the circle. "Hans here was just telling us about the time he got chased by a farmer's dog," one of the American soldiers explained, pointing to a young German prison of war who grinned sheepishly. "It was a very big dog." Hans defended himself in broken English, making everyone chuckle again. As I sat there, the tension slowly leaked from my shoulders. Someone passed around a package of cookies from home. An American nurse shared stories about her little sister's wedding. A German soldier talked about his mother's apple strudel, making everyone groan with hunger. These weren't enemies trading war stories. They were just people, sharing pieces of their lives before all this madness began. I found myself smiling, then laughing at their jokes. For a moment, I forgot about the wire fences surrounding us, forgot about the uniforms that marked us as different sides of a bitter war. When the night air grew too cold and people began dispersing, Jimmy offered to walk me back to my barracks. We walked in comfortable silence, our footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The camp lights cast long shadows around us. "Thank you," I said softly, "for inviting me to join. Everyone needs connection, Elsa," he replied, "even in times like these, maybe especially in times like these." Back in my barracks, I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling. The evening replayed in my mind, the laughter, the stories, Jimmy's gentle presence. But with each memory came a stab of doubt. Everything I'd been taught, everything I'd believed about Americans, about black people, about who was worthy of respect and kindness, it all felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse. I rolled onto my side, my thoughts churning. How could I reconcile the warmth I'd felt tonight with the hatred I'd been raised to believe? How could I make sense of Jimmy's kindness with what I'd been told about people like him? Sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I lay there in the darkness, my heart waging its own private war between what was and what could be. I wake up to the sound of boots crunching on gravel and muffled voices outside the barracks. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the camp is already stirring to life. I stretch on my narrow cot, my muscles aching from yesterday's long shift at the hospital. My mind drifts to last night. The unexpected warmth of community, the shared laughter, and Jimmy's gentle presence as he walked me back. Something has shifted inside me, like ice beginning to thaw. I slip on my shoes and step outside. The morning air is crisp, carrying the scent of pine trees that surround Camp McCoy. A few soldiers nod at me as they pass. Their casual acknowledgement no longer surprises me like it used to. "Morning, Nurse Weber," Jimmy calls out. He's carrying medical supplies toward the hospital building. His smile is warm, genuine. "Good morning," I reply, and find myself returning his smile. Just weeks ago, I would have looked away. But now everything feels different. Throughout the morning, I work alongside the American medical staff. We treat a soldier with a badly infected cut, and I watch as Jimmy assists, handling instruments with careful precision. His hands are steady, his voice calm, as he speaks to the patient. I remember what my father used to say about black people. Horrible things I can't even bear to think about now. How wrong he was. How wrong I was. During our lunch break, Jimmy and I sit on a bench outside the hospital. He tells me about his sister back in Alabama, how she's teaching at a colored school despite all the obstacles. She believes education is the key to change, he says. That knowledge can break down walls. I think about my own education, all those years of being taught to hate. Perhaps she is right, I say softly. Perhaps we all need to learn new things. Later, in a quiet moment between patients, Jimmy shares stories about growing up in the South. He describes the segregation, the daily humiliations, yet speaks without bitterness. "We keep hoping," he says. "We keep working for something better." His words stay with me through the afternoon. As I change bandages and check temperatures, I find myself seeing everything differently. These men, American, German, white, black, they're all just people. How could I have ever thought otherwise? That evening, I sit on my cot with a piece of paper and pencil. "Dear Mother and Father," I write, then pause. How can I explain what I'm feeling? How can I tell them that everything they taught me to believe is crumbling away? My hand trembles as I continue writing. I tell them about the camp, about the kindness I've found here. But when I try to write about Jimmy, about how he's helped me see the world differently, the words won't come. I stare at the unfinished letter, knowing I won't send it. Not yet. Not until I understand what's happening in my own heart. For the first time since arriving at Camp McCoy, I find myself thinking about staying in America, about building a life free from the hatred that poisoned my past. I fold the letter carefully and tuck it under my pillow. Outside, I can hear the evening sounds of the camp settling down, and somewhere in the distance, someone is playing a harmonica. The melody drifts through the air, sad and hopeful all at once. I hear the soft tapping of rain against the hospital windows as I organize medical supplies, my hands moving mechanically through the familiar motions. The ward is quiet tonight, with only a few patients sleeping soundly in their beds. Jimmy works nearby, checking inventory lists with his usual careful attention. News of repatriation has been spreading through the camp like wildfire. Soon, many of us will return to Germany, to the ruins of our former lives. The thought fills me with a heaviness I can't shake. "You're quiet tonight," Jimmy says, his voice gentle. He sets down his clipboard and walks over to where I'm standing. I nod, trying to find the right words. "I've been thinking about after, when the war is truly over." Jimmy leans against the supply cabinet, his presence steady and reassuring. "What do you see when you think about after?" The question catches in my chest. I've held these thoughts so close, afraid to give them voice. But here, in the dim light of the hospital ward, with only Jimmy to hear, I find my courage. I pause, my hands trembling slightly as I fold a bandage. I want a child. The words hang in the air between us. I keep my eyes fixed on the bandage in my hands, afraid to look up. "A child represents hope, new life," I continue, the words tumbling out now. Someone untouched by all this hatred and death, someone who could grow up knowing only love and acceptance. Jimmy remains silent, but I can feel his eyes on me. When I finally look up, his expression is thoughtful, understanding. I dream about that too sometimes, he admits quietly, having children of my own, teaching them about kindness, about seeing the good in people. He pauses, a shadow crossing his face. But the world isn't ready for certain things. Back home, there are places where people like me can't even drink from the same water fountain as whites. My heart aches at his words. I think of all the hatred I once carried, the prejudices I was taught. I was so wrong, I whisper. About everything. We all have our burdens to bear, Jimmy says. The things we were taught, the things we believed. What matters is how we choose to move forward. I nod, feeling tears prick at my eyes. But how do we move forward when the world seems determined to keep us in our separate corners? Jimmy doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he reaches out and gently takes the bandage from my hands, which have been nervously folding and refolding it. His touch is careful, respectful. One day at a time, he finally says. That's all any of us can do. We work in companionable silence after that, the rain providing a soft backdrop to our movements. When our shift ends, we walk together toward our separate barracks. The night sky has cleared, and stars sparkle overhead, impossibly bright and beautiful. I feel it then. That mix of longing and determination that has become so familiar. The future may be uncertain, but something has shifted inside me. I know now that love and kindness can bridge even the widest gaps, even if the bridge itself seems impossible to build. I stand in the doorway of the hospital ward, watching the commotion outside. The news of Germany's surrender spreads through Camp McCoy like wildfire. Some prisoners weep openly, while others stand in stunned silence. My homeland has fallen. The war is over. The morning sun feels different today, less harsh, but somehow colder. I wrap my arms around myself, trying to steady my trembling hands. Soldiers and prisoners alike move about in a daze, their faces a mixture of joy and disbelief. The 8th of May 1945, a date that will forever mark the end of everything I once knew. Captain Roberts gathers us prison of wars in the mess hall to announce our upcoming repatriation. His words echo in my ears. You'll be going home soon. Home. The word feels hollow now. What home? To a bombed-out Munich? To streets filled with rubble and defeat? I catch Jimmy's eye across the room. He stands near the door, his face unreadable. My chest tightens. We've barely spoken about what lies ahead, but now time is running out. Later that afternoon, I find him behind the hospital, stacking supply crates. The setting sun casts long shadows across the camp. So, he says quietly, you'll be heading back. They say within the month. My voice sounds strange to my own ears. Jimmy, I know. He sets down a crate and turns to face me. It's better this way, isn't it? You returning to your people, me staying with mine. The simplicity of his words breaks something inside me. My people? I laugh bitterly. What people? Everything I believed in was a lie. Everything they taught me was wrong. Not everything, he says softly. You still know how to care, how to heal. And what good is that now? I sink onto one of the crates, suddenly exhausted. They'll never accept me back there, not. I trail off, thinking of the changes within me, the walls that have crumbled. Jimmy leans against the hospital wall, his eyes distant. America ain't much better, Elsa. You've seen how they treat folks like me, even in uniform. That dream we talked about, a family, a future together, it'd be near impossible here. I know, the words taste bitter in my mouth, but going back feels like dying. A group of soldiers walks past, their voices carrying fragments of celebration. Someone's playing a harmonica somewhere in the camp. The sound drifts over us like a ghost of happier times. What will you do? I ask him. After all this? Head back to Alabama, probably. Try to make something of myself. Fight for change in my own way. He looks at me then, really looks at me. What about you? I shake my head slowly, watching the American flag flutter against the darkening sky. I don't know anymore. Everything feels untethered. The camp bustles around us as preparations for major repatriation begin. I see soldiers checking lists, organizing transport schedules. Each motion, each piece of paperwork brings me closer to an inevitable departure. Jimmy moves closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Whatever happens, Elsa, remember this. You learn to see past what they taught you. That's something they can never take away. I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The evening air grows cooler, and somewhere in the distance a train whistle blows, a lonely sound that seems to echo the emptiness growing inside me. I stand in front of the wooden door to the camp commandant's office, my hand trembling as I raise it to knock. The sound echoes through the hallway, and I hear a gruff, "Come in," from the other side. "Sir," I say, stepping into the office. My voice sounds smaller than I'd like. "I need to speak with you about the repatriation." Colonel Matthews looks up from his paperwork, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "What is it, nurse?" "Weber?" The words catch in my throat. "I would like to request permission to stay in America." He takes off his glasses, studying me with tired eyes. "Miss Weber, I understand this might be difficult, but regulations are clear. All prison of wars must return to their home countries." "Please," I say, hating how desperate I sound. "Germany isn't my home anymore. Everything I knew, everything I believed in." I trail off, thinking of the ruins of Munich, the broken streets of Berlin I've seen in newspaper photographs. "I'm sorry," he says, and I can tell he means it. "The decision isn't mine to make. The order comes from much higher up." I nod, blinking back tears. "Thank you for your time, sir." Outside his office, I lean against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The thought of boarding that train, of leaving everything behind, leaving Jimmy behind, makes my chest tight. I have to find him. I search the camp with growing urgency. The morning sun beats down on my neck as I check the hospital, the mess hall, and finally spot him near the supply depot. He's helping load boxes onto a truck, his movements precise and efficient. "Jimmy," I call out softly. He turns, and something in his expression tells me he's been expecting this conversation. We move away from the other soldiers, finding a quiet spot behind the depot. "I heard you're leaving today," he says. "I tried to stay," I tell him. "I went to Colonel Matthews, but—" "I know," Jimmy's voice is gentle. "The world isn't ready for what we dream about, Elsa." I look at him, memorizing every detail of his face, the kindness in his eyes, the slight curve of his lips, the way the sun catches his skin. "I don't want to go back," I whisper. "Everything there is destroyed, and not just the buildings. The people, the ideas, everything I once believed in. You've changed," he says. "That's not a bad thing. Will you write to me?" I ask even though I know how difficult it would be. A black American soldier corresponding with a German woman. "Every chance I get," he promises, and I want so badly to believe him. A whistle blows in the distance, the first warning for departure. My time is running out. "Jimmy, There are so many things I want to say, but the words won't come." He reaches out, hesitates, then gently squeezes my hand. It's the first time we've touched, and it feels like electricity running through my fingers. "I know," he says softly. I walk to the train platform, my feet heavy with each step. The steam from the locomotive creates a hazy curtain around everything, making the world seem dreamlike and distant. As I watch other prison of wars boarding, I think about all the changes that have happened within these camp walls, how I arrived full of hatred and fear, and how I'm leaving with my heart both fuller and more broken than I ever thought possible. The train rattles to a stop at Stuttgart Central Station, and my heart sinks. Through the grimy window, I see nothing but ruins. Buildings reduced to hollow shells, streets littered with rubble. This is my homeland, but I barely recognize it. My legs feel heavy as I step onto the platform, clutching my small bag of belongings from Camp McCoy. The station roof is partially collapsed, letting in streams of cold autumn rain. A few haggard-looking civilians hurry past, their faces drawn and tired. No one makes eye contact. The walk to my family's home in the suburbs takes twice as long as it used to. I have to navigate around bomb craters and collapsed buildings. The familiar bakery where I used to buy fresh bread every morning is gone, replaced by a mountain of broken bricks. The church where I married Carl is missing its spire. When I finally reach our street, my mother comes running out to meet me. She's thinner than I remember, her face lined with new wrinkles. We embrace, and she sobs into my shoulder. "My Elsa, my dear girl, you're alive. Inside, the house is intact, but cold. There's no fuel for heating," my father explains. He looks older, too, defeated somehow. They pepper me with questions about America, about my capture, about the prison of war camp. I answer carefully, leaving out the parts about Jimmy, about how the Americans treated us with dignity, about my growing doubts about everything I was raised to believe. "At least you're home now," my mother says, patting my hand. "Things will get better. We'll rebuild." But as the days pass, I feel like a stranger in my own home. My parents' casual comments about those Americans make me wince. They cannot understand why I defend our former enemies, why I speak of kindness and humanity instead of bitterness and revenge. At night, I write long letters to Jimmy by candlelight. I tell him about the destruction I see everywhere, about the hungry children in the streets, about how I feel trapped in a past I no longer believe in. I pour out my dreams of returning to America, of building something new, from the ashes of war. But weeks pass, and no replies come. "You're different," my mother says one evening as we share a meager supper of thin soup. "The war changed you." "Yes," I reply simply, because how can I explain? How can I tell them that in an American prison of war camp, I found more humanity than I ever knew existed? How can I explain that a black soldier showed me more dignity and kindness than I deserved, and in doing so, shattered everything I thought I knew about the world? Today, I stand by the broken window in what was once our sitting room. The glass was blown out months ago, and we've covered it with scraps of wood. Through the gaps, I watch people picking through the rubble, searching for anything useful. The sight of my hometown in ruins fills me with sadness, but also with determination. I cannot go back to being the person I was before the war. That Elsa died somewhere between Normandy and Wisconsin, between the moment of my capture and the first time Jimmy showed me what true humanity looks like. Whatever comes next, I know I must find my own path forward, even if it leads me away from everything I once knew. The envelope trembles in my hands as I recognize Jimmy's neat handwriting. For weeks, I've been waiting, hoping, wondering if he would write. Now, sitting at my small desk in what remains of my childhood home, I carefully open the letter. The paper is crisp, military issue, and I can almost smell the camp hospital as I unfold it. My heart beats faster as I begin to read. "Dear Elsa," the letter begins. "I hope this finds you well. The camp feels different without you here. Empty, somehow." I think about our conversations often, especially the ones we had in those quiet evening hours in the hospital. I pause, touching the words gently. Jimmy's kindness flows through every carefully chosen phrase. He writes about his daily life, the changes happening in America now that the war is over. Some soldiers have already gone home, he tells me, but he stayed on at Camp McCoy. "Things aren't easy here," he continues. "The world hasn't changed as much as we hoped it would, but I want you to know something, Elsa. If you ever decide to come back to America, I'll be here. I'll help you however I can." Tears blur my vision as I read on. Jimmy describes his plans. He's saving money, making connections with people who might be able to help. He knows the challenges we would face, but his words are full of quiet determination. "I know it won't be simple," he writes, "but I believe in the future we talked about. A future where people can live without hatred, where children can grow up learning love instead of fear." I get up from my desk and walk to the window, still holding the letter. Outside, people shuffle through the rubble-strewn streets of Munich. The reconstruction is slow, and sometimes it feels like the weight of defeat hangs over everything like a heavy cloud. Returning to my desk, I read the letter again, and again, each time. Jimmy's words fill me with something I haven't felt since leaving America. Hope. Real, tangible hope. With shaking hands, I pull out my own paper and pen. The words flow easily now, as if they've been waiting to be written. I tell Jimmy about Germany, about the destruction I see every day. I write about my family's confusion over my changed views, their inability to understand why I can't simply return to my old life. "I feel like a stranger here," I write. "Everything I once believed in has crumbled, just like the buildings around me. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe sometimes things need to fall apart so we can build something better." I tell him about my dreams of returning to America, of finding a place where we could build a life together. It's terrifying to put these thoughts on paper, to make them real, but I know I must. As I finish the letter, I feel lighter somehow. The room around me is still the same, the cracked walls, the makeshift repairs, the constant reminder of everything that's been lost. But inside, something has shifted. Jimmy's letter has given me what I needed most, the knowledge that I'm not alone in this dream of a different future. I fold my response carefully, sealing it in an envelope. Tomorrow, I'll mail it, sending my hopes across the ocean to the man who showed me that kindness can exist even in the darkest places. I fold Jimmy's letter and press it close to my heart, his words filling me with renewed purpose. The past weeks in Germany have been suffocating. The ruins of my hometown, the defeated faces of my neighbors, the crushing weight of everything we've lost. But now, I have something to look forward to. I spend my mornings at the local administrative office, filling out endless forms for American immigration. The process is daunting, but I refuse to give up. Each paper I sign brings me one step closer to a new life. "You're making a mistake," my mother tells me over dinner. Her eyes are tired, her face lined with worry. "America isn't your home, Elsa. Stay here, rebuild with us." But I can't. Every street corner reminds me of the lies we believed, the hatred we carried. I think of Jimmy's gentle smile, his quiet strength, and I know where I need to be. The immigration officer, Mr. Schmidt, reviews my application with raised eyebrows. "It won't be easy," he warns me. Many Americans still see Germans as enemies, and your connection with this soldier. He leaves the sentence hanging, but I understand his meaning. I know the challenges, I tell him firmly. I'm prepared to face them. Finally, after weeks of waiting, my papers come through. Jimmy has helped arrange everything from his end, finding me a sponsor and a place to stay in Wisconsin. His letters have been my lifeline, full of practical advice and quiet encouragement. The morning of my departure arrives cold and gray. I pack my few belongings, some clothes, my nursing credentials, and Jimmy's letters. Mother helps. Me, her movements slow and reluctant. I don't understand you anymore, she whispers. I don't understand myself sometimes, I admit, but I know this is right. At the train station, I hug her goodbye. She feels fragile in my arms, like a bird with hollow bones. Be careful, she pleads. Write to me. I will, I promise, though we both know things will never be the same between us. The train pulls away from the station, and I watch my old life disappear into the distance. Fields scarred by war roll past my window. Other passengers chat quietly, most heading to the port like me, seeking new beginnings across the ocean. At the port, I board the ship that will take me to America. My heart pounds as I climb the gangway, my single suitcase feeling lighter with each step. Other passengers mill around. Displaced persons, returning soldiers, families seeking fresh starts. I find my way to the deck, gripping the railing as the ship prepares to depart. The harbor is busy with activity, cranes loading cargo, sailors calling out instructions. The breeze carries the scent of salt and possibility. As the ship's horn sounds and we begin to move, I feel tears rolling down my cheeks. But they're not tears of sadness. For the first time since the war ended, I feel truly free. The wind whips through my hair, and I close my eyes, savoring the sensation. The weight I've carried for so long, the guilt, the shame, the fear, begins to lift from my shoulders. Somewhere across the ocean, Jimmy is waiting. And with him, the promise of a life built on love instead of hate, on hope instead of fear. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I know I'm finally heading in the right direction. The salt air whips across my face as I stand at the ship's railing, watching the New York harbor grow larger with each passing minute. Lady Liberty stands tall and proud, her torch raised high against the morning sky. My heart pounds against my ribs as I scan the crowd gathering at the dock. And then I see him. Jimmy stands apart from the others, his tall frame easy to spot even at this distance. He's wearing his civilian clothes now, a neat brown suit and tie. Just the sight of him makes my hands tremble. We've exchanged so many letters over these past months, but seeing him in person again feels like a dream. The ship docks with a gentle thud, and I clutch my small suitcase tighter. Everything I own in the world is in this case. A few clothes, some photographs, and Jimmy's letters. As I walk down the gangplank, my legs feel unsteady, but not from the sea voyage. Jimmy steps forward as I reach the bottom. For a moment, we just look at each other. Then he opens his arms, and I step into them without hesitation. The embrace is warm and real, everything I've been hoping for during those lonely months in Germany. Welcome home, Elsa, he whispers against my hair. Home. The word fills me with a warmth I haven't felt in years. We settle in a small town in New Jersey, where people are a little more accepting, or at least less openly hostile, to couples like us. It's not perfect, but it's a start. I find work at the local hospital, where they're desperate enough for trained nurses that they don't ask too many questions about my accent or my past. The other nurses are kind enough, though some keep their distance. But I'm used to that. What matters is the work, caring for patients, easing pain, bringing comfort. It helps heal something in me, too. Jimmy and I meet when we can, usually in the evenings after my shift ends. Sometimes we walk in the park, other times we sit in the small diner where the owner, Mrs. Martinez, doesn't mind serving us together. Tonight, we're sitting on a bench watching the sunset, and my heart feels full to bursting. Jimmy, I say softly, turning to face him. Remember what I told you that night in the camp hospital about wanting children? He nods, his hand finding mine. His fingers are warm and strong, just like I remember from those first tentative touches in the camp. I still dream about it, I continue. I dream about a little one who could grow up without all the hatred I was taught, without the fear and the lies. I pause, gathering my courage. A child who could be proud of both their parents, who would know love instead of hate. Jimmy's thumb traces circles on my palm. His eyes, when they meet mine, are filled with such tenderness it makes my throat tight. I dream about that too, Elsa, he says quietly. He smiles, that same gentle smile that first made me question everything I thought I knew about the world. We sit there together as the sky turns purple and gold, his hand warm in mine. There are still obstacles ahead of us, so many I can barely count them all. But for the first time since the war began, I feel truly hopeful about the future. Months slip by, like pages in a well-worn book. Each day, I find myself growing more comfortable in this new life Jimmy and I have built together. The small town we chose to settle in has its challenges, but we've found pockets of acceptance among neighbors who see past our differences. I work at the local hospital now, my hands staying busy with the familiar routines of nursing. The staff took time to warm up to me, a German woman with an accent that still carries the weight of my past. But my skills speak louder than any prejudices they might have held. Jimmy works at the railway station, his steady presence a comfort to me each evening when he returns home. We've made our little house into something that feels like home. With curtains I sewed myself in a small garden where I grow herbs like my mother used to. One morning, as summer turns to fall, I notice the first signs. The familiar symptoms I've seen in so many other women now manifest in me. The slight nausea, the tenderness, the fatigue. When I confirm my suspicions, my hands tremble as I wait for Jimmy to come home from work. A baby? Jimmy's voice is soft with wonder when I tell him. His strong hands cradle my face, and I see tears in his eyes. Our baby? I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. This is everything we dreamed of during those quiet conversations at Camp McCoy. Everything that seemed impossible then. As my belly grows, so does our hope. Jimmy spends evenings talking to the baby, his hand resting gentle on my stomach. He tells stories about his childhood in Alabama, about his grandmother's cooking, about the dreams he has for our child's future. I add my own stories, careful ones, about my mother's garden and the sweet smell of Christmas markets, steering clear of the darker memories of war. Not everyone approves of our happiness. I see the looks when we walk together, hear the whispers that follow us in the street. Some neighbors turn away when we pass, others cross to the other side. But for every person who shuns us, there's another who offers a smile, a kind word, a small gesture of support. Mrs. Thompson from the house next door brings over a handmade blanket, saying every baby needs something made with love. Doctor. Richards at the hospital insists on being my physician, standing firm against those who question his decision to treat us. These small kindnesses remind me of what first drew me to Jimmy, that unwavering belief in the goodness that can exist between people. At night, I lie in our bed, Jimmy's arm draped protectively over me. The baby moves inside me, a flutter like butterfly wings. Each kick, each movement is a reminder of the miracle we've created, not just the child growing within me, but this life we've built together. The world outside our door is still full of prejudice and pain, but in here, in this space we've carved out for ourselves, there is only love. Jimmy's breath is warm against my neck, his hand resting on my swollen belly. Our child moves again, stronger this time, and I smile in the darkness. The pain hits me like waves crashing against rocks. I grip Jimmy's hand tighter as another contraction tears through my body. The hospital room feels too bright, too sterile, but Jimmy's presence anchors me. His calm voice whispers encouragements in my ear. You're doing great, Elsa. Just breathe, like we practiced. I try to focus on his voice, remembering how far we've come from those first days at Camp McCoy. The nurses bustle around us, checking monitors and preparing for the delivery. They treat us with professional courtesy, though I notice a few sideways glances. Even here, in this progressive part of the country, we're still something of an oddity, a German woman and a black man. Another contraction grips me, and I cry out. The doctor checks my progress and announces it's time. Jimmy's hand trembles slightly in mine, but his voice remains steady. I'm right here, sweetheart, right here with you. The next few minutes blur into a haze of pain and determination. I push when they tell me to push, breathe when they say breathe. Jimmy never leaves my side, his presence a constant comfort. Through the fog of exhaustion, I hear the doctor's encouraging words. One more big push, Mrs. Johnson. With everything I have left, I bear down. Suddenly the pressure releases, and a new sound fills the room, the powerful cry of our baby. Tears stream down my face as I watch the doctor lift our child, all pink and perfect and angry at the world. It's a girl, the doctor announces, placing her on my chest. I gaze down at our daughter, this miracle we've created. She has Jimmy's beautiful dark curls and my light eyes. She's the perfect blend of both of us, a living symbol of everything we've overcome. Jimmy leans down to kiss my forehead, and I see tears in his eyes too. She's beautiful, he whispers, just like her mama. As I hold our daughter, memories of the past flash through my mind. The war, the hatred I once carried, the fear and uncertainty at Camp McCoy. But looking at her now, all I see is love. She represents everything I never knew I wanted, everything I never thought possible. The nurses help clean her up and wrap her in a soft blanket. When they hand her back to me, Jimmy sits on the edge of the bed, his arm around my shoulders. Our daughter's tiny hand wraps around his finger, and I watch his face light up with wonder. "What should we name her?" he asks softly. "Hope," I reply without hesitation. "Because that's what she is. Hope for a better world." Jimmy nods, understanding perfectly. We've talked about this before, about our wishes for our child's future. We know the road ahead won't be easy. There will always be people who don't understand or accept our family. But looking at our daughter now, peaceful in my arms, I know we'll face whatever comes together. The afternoon light streams through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over our little family. Jimmy holds us both close, and I lean into his strength, exhausted but completely content. Our daughter, our hope, sleeps peacefully, unaware of the significance of her very existence. "I love you," Jimmy whispers, first to me, then to our daughter. Both of you. In this moment, holding our newborn child with Jimmy by my side, I feel an overwhelming sense of peace. We've created something beautiful from the ashes of war, a family built on love, understanding, and hope. I sit beside Jimmy on our small front porch, watching the sun climb over the horizon. The wooden steps creak beneath us as we rock gently in the porch swing he built last summer. Our coffee cups steam in the cool morning air, and I can't help but smile as I hear our baby's soft coos through the open window behind us. "Another beautiful morning," Jimmy says, his voice warm and gentle. I nod, leaning my head against his shoulder. The neighborhood is quiet at this hour, just the way I like it. A few birds twitter in the maple tree that shades our yard, and somewhere down the street, a screen door slams. I never thought I'd have this, I admit. My accent's still thick, even after all these years. Back in Germany, during the war, everything was so dark, so hopeless. Jimmy's hand finds mine, his fingers intertwining with my own. God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? I smile at that. Jimmy's faith has always been strong, even in the face of prejudice and hatred. It's one of the many things I've come to love about him. Our baby starts to fuss inside, and I move to stand, but Jimmy beats me to it. "I'll get her," he says, pressing a kiss to my forehead before disappearing into the house. I watch the sunrise, paint the sky in soft pinks and oranges, remembering those first days at Camp McCoy, how lost I'd felt, how confused by the kindness shown to me by the very people I'd been taught to hate, especially Jimmy's kindness. He returns with our daughter, Maria, wrapped in the yellow blanket my mother sent from Germany. She's already smiling, her tiny hands reaching for Jimmy's face. Our beautiful girl, with her father's warm brown eyes and my light hair, living proof that love knows no boundaries. "Good morning, little one," I whisper, taking her into my arms. She smells of baby powder and sweet milk, and my heart swells with love. Jimmy settles back beside us, his arm draped protectively around my shoulders. "Mrs. Peterson from next door brought over another casserole yesterday," he tells me. "Said she thought we might be too busy with the baby to cook." I shake my head amazed. When we first moved to this neighborhood, some people wouldn't even look at us. But slowly, one act of kindness at a time, things began to change. Mrs. Peterson was one of the first to welcome us, bringing over a pie and staying for coffee. "We should invite her over for dinner soon," I suggest. "To thank her," Jimmy nods. "Maybe we could invite the Richardsons, too. Their boy's been asking to see the baby." Maria gurgles happily in my arms, and I bounce her gently. The morning air is growing warmer, and the street is starting to come alive with the sounds of people beginning their day. A few neighbors wave as they collect their morning papers or head off to work. Sometimes, Jimmy says softly, "I think about that day in the camp hospital when you first really talked to me. Remember? How could I forget?" I respond, remembering the moment when my walls first began to crumble. "You offered me coffee." "Just coffee," he chuckles. "But you looked at me like I'd handed you the world." "You did," I say simply. "You showed me a different way to see the world. A better way." Maria reaches up to pat my cheek with her tiny hand, and I kiss her palm. The sun is fully up now, casting long shadows across our front yard. The dew sparkles on the grass, and the flowers I planted along the walkway are starting to bloom. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.